Hi, and welcome to the first part of 3 bite-sized videos on independent learning strategies in a digital environment. We will focus on the what, how and why of independent learning in this part of the presentation. The second video will focus on digital pedagogies to leverage and accelerate independent learning. And the third video will offer advice from practitioners from the pedagogies team in Dundee City Council, and they will exemplify how they've been developing independent learning strategies across the local authority. There are particularly 2 themes emerging throughout this presentation. The first one is focusing on you, practitioner, as a mentor and a coach to your learners and what that looks like in promoting and prompting students to identify the right strategies to solve tasks, problems efficiently and effectively. And secondly, the use of digital as the accelerator to improve outcomes, improve motivation and engagement across the breadth of the curriculum. Prominent evidence has been emerging throughout this pandemic from the International Council of Education Advisors for Scotland and reports from the Education Endowment Foundation, both which highlight how essential independent learning and digital skills are. So what are we going to cover? We're going to cover an introduction to independent learning, recommendations and technologies to support these strategies, and also you'll hear from practitioners, and we'll also offer some research and further reading throughout this presentation which can be found on the Learning Pathway for Independent Learning on DigiLearn Scot. I would like you to reflect throughout this presentation on these 5 questions. So 5 really important reflective questions that again I would like you to keep in the forefront of your mind throughout these 3 videos. So what is independent learning? Well, it's basically when pupils have the skills to set their own goals, monitor and evaluate their own academic development so they can manage their own motivation towards learning. Independent and metacognitive strategies are particularly important for pupils when learning away from the classroom environment. So digital technologies play a vital and central role to build the skills required to develop self-regulated learners, providing ownership and mastery of their learning. There's prominent evidence again from the Education Endowment Foundation on using digital technologies to improve learning, and they have 2 considerations throughout this report. 1, ensuring access to technology is key, especially for our disadvantaged learners, and 2, supporting pupils to work independently can improve learning outcomes. And again, we'll speak a little bit more about this as we go through this presentation. So, understanding independent learning. Well, it can be broken down into these 3 essential components. Cognition, the mental process involved in knowing, understanding and learning. Metacognition, thinking about our own learning and learning to learn. And thirdly, motivation, the willingness to engage our metacognitive and cognitive skills. Together with cognition and motivation, metacognition is key to fostering independent learners who are actively engaged in improving their own learning. Your role as educators is to explicitly teach pupils these metacognitive strategies, including how to plan, monitor and evaluate their own learning across the curriculum. And again, the best available evidence indicates that great teaching is the most important lever to improve outcomes and learner self-efficacy. There's excellent research from the OECD which highlights student agency as being essential. When pupils feel in control of their own learning and can help direct what they learn, research indicates they show greater motivation to learn. And this is the OECD Student Agency 2030 report, again, which you'll be able to find on DigiLearn Scot in this learning pathway. So I thought it was also really important, although we have spoken an awful lot about the why and why independent learning is so important, but to put that into a global context. And that global context comes from the World Economic Forum and the Top 10 Skills of 2025. So in this report, they highlight that by 2025, 85 million jobs may be displaced by a shift in the division of labour between humans and machines. Critical thinking and problem solving top the list of skills that employers believe will grow in prominence in the next 5 years. And newly emerging this year are skills in self-management, basically the same as independent learning and self-regulated learning. So I really want you to take time now to have a look at the summary of recommendations from the Education Endowment Foundation. It's a 7-point poster, all areas highlighted within this presentation, and we'll next be moving on to point 2, planning, monitoring and evaluating in a digital context. This evidence suggests the use of metacognitive strategies, which gets pupils to think about their own learning, can be worth the equivalent of an additional 7 months progress when used well. So again, I would ask you just to take time to reflect and read through these 7 questions before moving on. So how can we use digital to accelerate learning across our curriculum and foster independent learning? These are but a few freely available tools, and digital pedagogical support is available for each of these resources via DigiLearn Scott. But within this slide, again, I have divided this into planning, monitoring and evaluating, which is intrinsically linked to our moderation cycle. So in the next presentation, you will hear how each of these areas can be developed and supported through digital tools to develop learning and teaching, and also how this links to the moderation cycle.